Hello everyone and welcome to Merlin's Manor. Today I'm going to be doing an overview of the Final Girls Season 2 feature films and the Terror from the Grave vignette. I'm going to start out by giving an overview and my thoughts on the various feature films. Then I'm going to rank the killers from my favorite to least favorite, and then rank the locations from favorite to least favorite. Then I'm going to give my recommendations for which feature films to go for, depending on what you are looking for. Finally, I will give my thoughts on the vignette separate from the rest, as it's kind of like a mini expansion and it does play quite differently from the rest. Let's start out by talking about Once Upon a Full Moon, which is the Big Bad Wolf and the storybook Woods. This is the easiest of the Season 2 killers, and the locations as well, both in complexity as well as in defeating the killer, the Big Bad Wolf. The only rule that is added for the killer is that he starts in track mode, and he will only do the track action both on his default action and on his terror cards that have a track and a slay action. Then once he reaches a certain level on the bloodlust track, he switches from track to slay. Now you need to be careful because it can be easy to forget about this and do both actions on the terror cards just out of habit of going down the card. And that actually happened in the original playthrough video that I did on the channel for the Big Bad Wolf. I actually took that one down and put up a new one where I played it properly, because even though I knew what I was supposed to do, I just got in that habit of just going down the card. Now this mechanic also makes the Big Bad Wolf the easiest of all the killers to defeat, as he spends the first part of the game doing nothing but moving around the board. And this can vary from a turn to more than halfway through the game, depending on the terror cards that come up. Then he switches to not having any innate movement, but instead attacking those in his space. Of course, terror cards will provide him with movement as normal. Now, even apart from this, he is not a particularly tough character. Hans, he is not. The only scary thing about the Big Bad Wolf is he has one terror card. I think there's 2 copies of that one in there that can insta-kill you if it gets drawn on you and you're not prepared for it with some guards or retaliate cards. The location is a very nice location. It has some powerful items, and it's a little smaller than others, enabling you to move around quicker. It does have one extra rule that can be a pain sometimes, which offsets the kind of OP items and smaller nature of the board, and that is that you can only take one person with you across the bridges. Now, I really do like this location due to the items. You've got birds that do 3 damage to the killer, and then you discard them and then get them back potentially with the bird cage. You have the hatchet that can be thrown to an adjacent space, and then you use a search card to retrieve it, or you can use it from the same space and hold on to it. You've got an archery bow that's pretty powerful. You've got a cool slingshot. So I really like a lot of the items in the Storybook Woods. I also like the events and the storybook theme. Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, and fairies and different things like this. This was one of the killers that I was most excited about, but he really left me wanting something more, as he was too easy compared to the other killers. Although one of the scenarios from the lore and scenario book did ramp up the difficulty quite a bit. If you're looking for a simpler killer in complexity or easier to defeat killer, then I would go for this one. This is Season 2's version of a starter pack like Hans is from Season 1, though I'd say the Big Bad Wolf is easier to defeat, so long as you remember to only do either the slay or the track effects and not both on those terror cards. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is Into the Void, which is the Evomorph and the u.s.s. Conrad. Now, this is one of the more interesting locations in that it offers 2 additional ways to win by activating an airlock and luring the killer into that cargo bay and then opening the airlock on it, or by activating the self-destruct, and then you have to make it to a life pod by the end of the next turn. Of course, either of these could lead you to dying and losing as well, if you don't make it out or if you are in the airlock when you open it. The location adds key cards that you're going to be trying to get in order to activate the various computer systems. In addition to the self-destruct and the airlock, you can activate a trash compactor that will do damage to anyone passing through without you, or an incinerator, which potentially does damage to anyone, including yourself, if they're in there during the upkeep phase, by rolling a die and you find out if it's going to do damage and how much it will do. You can also use key cards to open up vents for you to travel through to get to places quicker or to escape a killer briefly. You also have a super loader you can get into that slows down your movement, but it increases your attack by 2 and it reduces the damage that you take. A couple of cool items for this location are the flamethrower, which causes you to distribute damage equally to victims, enemies, and yourself in that space. You might want to be careful about doing that while there are victims there or if you're in the same space there. And then the Vibro Claw, which does an extra damage. And when used with a reaction card, it adds an extra damage to the attacker. So 2 damage on a retaliate and 1 damage on a guard. So that can be really handy if you are using those guards and retaliates. One of my favorite weapons, in fact, in the Final Girl is that Vibro Claw for this very reason. Now, the Evil Morph is an alien that starts out as a hatchling and evolves over the course of the game into a youngling and finally into an adult. Now, as a hatchling, it can do 10 damage, so it can insta-kill you, but it has lower health. As a youngling, it has the same low health and it disappears into hiding. And then finally, as an adult, it has 10 health, and it will come out of hiding and it's going to attack you using ambush cards. And the terror cards will sometimes send it back into hiding. You have scan cards that you can use when it's hiding to place an X so that it cannot actually appear in that space when it appears. Also, with 3 successes on a scan card, you can draw the Evil Morph out of hiding to attack it. And the next killer phase is skipped. So it's pretty powerful, but it hardly ever happens that you'll get 3 successes. Overall, the alien is a unique killer with its evolving mechanism and the fact that it isn't always on the board, and when it's off the board, it uses those ambush cards instead of terror cards. Then we got Panic at Station 2891. The organism, which represents the thing there in that movie, is a very unique killer. At the start of the game, you have 3 exposed victims, and any one of them, or even all of them, could wind up being a mutant organism. Now, they do not attack until they are revealed as organisms, so you are somewhat safe for the first part of the game. You need to start testing them, or else you'll wind up with 3 mutant organisms all spawning in at the finale reveal. You test them either by bringing them to the lab or by using test kits that you get when searching locations. When you test, you start out with a 2 out of 3 chance of the person being safe. Whenever someone is found to be safe, you remove that test result from the deck, so odds increase of finding a mutant organism with your future tests. And if the first 2 tests are safe, then you are guaranteed that the last one is going to be a mutant. Now, you can have anywhere between 1 and 3 killers in the game, and they each have their own stats and actions based on the bloodlust track. When a mutant is discovered, you apply all of the effects of the bloodlust track up to the current bloodlust level, and then they come in. The location itself also has some interesting mechanics to it. The terror cards can sometimes add frostbite to characters that are outside. The first time this happens is fine, but the second time the person will die. You, as well as victims and enemies, can get rid of the frostbite tokens by being indoors during the upkeep phase. The location also adds a bit of a roadblock in order to save victims. There is only 1 exit space, which is a helicopter pad, and you need to get them on the helicopter, which can hold a maximum of 3 victims. And then it needs to take a trip to the Arctic airport and back before it can load more victims on it. You also don't get the reward for saving the victims until the helicopter reaches that airport. The helicopter moves forward naturally when the terror cards with frostbite come up, and you can also play a fly faster card to potentially move the helicopter 1 to 2 spaces. This location adds a few interesting items as well. You have a 2-way radio that you start out with and another one that can be found, which you can use to move a person 1 space, which can be pretty handy to get a victim to the helicopter. It does cost 1 time, and you can only move the same victim once per round. Or you can also use it to bring them inside to avoid dying to frostbite, or just to your location, so then you can take them from there or use their abilities if they're a special victim. You also have a flamethrower, which is more powerful than the Conrad's flamethrower in that you do not damage victims or yourself, and you do damage equal to half the killer's health, and you can do that up to 2 times with that flamethrower. The catch is that you cannot have any other items in your backpack or hands if you have the flamethrower, and so you have to discard all other items. Another one of my favorite items is the Alaskan Malamute, which does a damage to an enemy when they enter your space, and they will also defend you the next time you are attacked, but unfortunately the killer kills them instead of damaging you. Yuki's Malamute does have the advantage of being able to stand up to 3 attacks before it gets discarded. All in all, I really enjoy both the killer and the location here. It's perhaps one of the harder locations as well as one of the more complex killers and locations in Season 2. Now the next one is a knock at the door with the intruders and the location, the Wingard Cottage. Now, this one is based on the home invasion theme in movies like The Strangers and You're Next. It has you facing off against 3 killers. And all 3 killers activate each turn to kill someone in their space, but generally the killers only act one at a time beyond that unless a tarot card says all killers or has activations for multiple killers. You have an active killer, so you have an idea who is more likely to act in the killer phase, but this can get changed up on you, so you do need to be prepared for any one of the killers to be activated and come after you or victims. The one nice thing about this is sometimes you get lucky and the active killer changes when you really didn't want the current killer to be active. Also, if you attack a killer, they become the active killer. They're not just going to stand there and be a punching bag for you without them going after you. Since all killers attack someone in their space each time, you definitely do not want to get caught in a space with all 3 killers without a few ways to defend. This one is not too complex to run. The big thing is just changing up the active killer depending on which way the arrow is pointing on tarot cards. That changes the active killer. The location itself adds a little bit of complexity by giving you a weapon crafting system. Each game you have 4 craftable weapons drawn at random, and sometimes the ability to get more. There are 5 locations on the map that give you crafting items, such as a rope, discarded tools, nails, and wood, which you spend a time to pick up. Then you can combine certain items together, sometimes requiring a specific item from the item deck as well, to make an item, such as a weapon or a trap of some sort that will help you. It does take some time to gather supplies from around the board, and you use time to pick up the supplies and to craft the items. Plus, some items rely on you finding a specific item in one of the item decks, so you may not always be able to craft some of these items, either because you do not find the necessary item in the item deck, or it just takes too much traveling around the board to get what you need in order to craft it. The only really unique non-crafted item in this game is the blender, which must be used in the house and can deal 3 damage to an enemy, and then you discard it. This just might be related to one of the movies that inspired this feature film. There's also an interesting event where you can go inside and set the alarm if there are no intruders currently inside. And then for 3 times when they try to enter, they simply don't move into the house. I do really enjoy this location and the challenge of facing off against 3 killers. The killers themselves are a little easier to deal with, only having 6 health, and you have a starting horror level of 3. They're only doing a modest amount of damage to you. But you really do have to be careful that you don't allow yourself to become surrounded, or worse, subject to 3 attacks by having all 3 of them in your space during the killer phase. That is where you can get destroyed very quickly. Although it can also be very satisfying if you're able to attack all 3 at once with the sawed-off and then move out of the space before they can get you. You can also leave one barely alive and get the benefit of an extra die roll each round, or is it better to take them out fully to have one less killer attacking you and victims on the board? The choice, of course, is up to you. And so Madness in the Dark is the next one I'm going to talk about, and that is the Ratchet Lady and the location, the Wolf Asylum. Now, the Ratchet Lady is the killer that seems to give people the most stress. And the reason for this is that while she starts out with a modest 6 health, she has no upper limit on her health and several ways to heal or get more health. It is not unusual for her to grow to 16 or more health in a game. And one game that I played, she had like 19 or 20 health at one point. Now, this is balanced a bit by the fact that she is one of the weakest killers in the game, dealing only 1 damage for a good part of the game, then 2 damage for all but the final segment of the Bloodlust track, which still is only going to be 3. So if you can keep her from getting to that full bloodlust, you can usually tank her attacks and heal quite a bit while you slowly whittle away her health. She also adds minions called maniacs, which will chase after you and do 1 damage when they attack. You also have to take damage from the maniacs if you try to leave a space with more than 1 maniac in it. Now you can attempt to calm the maniacs and turn them into regular victims, which you can then save as normal. The location itself is also very interesting. You have a pill mechanism where you collect pills and take 1 pill to give you a minor boost, or 2 different pills together risking a side effect for a stronger boost, or even 3 different pills together to get a really powerful amped card, which also comes with a greater risk of having a side effect. Some of the items add a stunned effect, which I found a little underwhelming. It doesn't keep stunned enemies from attacking, it only stops them from moving. This can be good if you really just don't want the killer following you or going after victims, but if you end your turn in their space, they will still attack you. And if any victims are in their space or wander into their space, then they are still going to be subject to an attack. There are some interesting items from a thematic standpoint. You have a bone saw, you have a hook-handled bone hammer, a defibrillator, a laughing gas canister, tranquilizer dart, a patient gown. But from the perspective of interesting positive abilities that you would really seek after each game, the only one that really stands out to me is the adrenaline shot, which allows you to discard your current final health token to reveal 3 final health tokens when you would have to reveal your current final health token. So basically, it's increasing your chances of surviving the attack. Of course, you could find yourself discarding the 3 heart token and getting all blanks, but the odds are more in your favor that you're going to survive that attack that takes you down and out of your final health there. Now, the 2 most powerful weapons have negative side effects for using them, like increasing the horror with the bone saw and potentially taking damage with the bone hammer. So while they're very strong weapons, they're balanced with the fact that there's some negatives to using them. Now, an interesting event is the hospital gurney, which is a vehicle, if you will, that allows you to transport 2 extra victims with you. It's very handy for saving victims. You can also discard the gurney to ram it into an enemy to inflict damage on that enemy. And it's 1 damage plus 2 for each victim that's on the gurney. But the victims on the gurney are then killed and the bloodlust increases as normal, so this move isn't without consequences. Now let's talk about my rankings and recommendations. As far as the killers go, it was really hard to rank these because 4 out of the 5 are really great for different reasons, and they all 5 feel very unique. I would say my favorite is the organism, as it is so unique where you start out kind of calm, not being attacked, but you can't waste any time because you've got to get those test kits, you've got to get prepared, and you need to start testing, or you're going to find yourself facing off against 3 different killers, 2 of which are quite strong. Also, all 3 organisms have unique actions and stats, so which one you get can change up your strategy quite a bit. One bad thing is that even with testing them all, you could still wind up with 3 killers, but you do have the chance to take them out one at a time that way still. The next 3 really could have gone either way, but I'm going to go with the intruders next, as they offer a bit of tension, as any one can activate at a given time. You definitely don't want to be caught with all 3 at once, unless you can get away before the killer phase. Then I will say the Ratchet Lady is going to be third, as her ability to tank your attacks by getting more and more health offers an interesting challenge, and since that is balanced with her attacks being weaker, it offers an interesting puzzle sometimes of when you focus on attacking, when you focus on healing, and there really is no running away because she is super fast, even early game. Her maniacs also offer an interesting dynamic to deal with. It can be fun to calm some of those maniacs and quickly save them for your bonus. Fourth, I'm going to place the Evomorph, which I almost put at second because thematically I'm very drawn to this killer, but I shifted it down 2 spaces to fourth because the evolve mechanism can be a bit of a pain sometimes, as it disappears just when you wanted to go in for the attack, or it appears at just the inopportune time. This does add to the tension a little bit, but sometimes leads to anticlimactic gameplay while it is gone, followed by overly climactic gameplay when it appears all of a sudden. I still really enjoy it and almost had to nitpick a little to try to separate these three killers here in the middle of my rankings. Finally, we have the Big Bad Wolf, which to me is a D tier killer down at the bottom of my rankings for both seasons, probably about level with the Poltergeist from season 1 due to the huge luck factor with the Poltergeist, although I do appreciate the way the Poltergeist changes up the way the game plays and offers an alternate challenge, but it's still my least enjoyed one of the first season. I really wanted to like the Big Bad Wolf and was originally excited about the Big Bad Wolf, but the track and slay really weakens the Big Bad Wolf and often makes him too easy to defeat compared to all the other killers. Now, as far as locations go, my rankings are the u.s.s. Conrad first because of the 3 unique ways you can win the game, and the extra machinery you can activate to help you with the killers. And the Vibro Claw doesn't hurt matters here as one of my favorite weapons. Next is going to be the Storybook Woods. The theme is fun and it has some great items and some fun events. Only being able to take one person at a time across bridges can be annoying, but it does balance how easy other aspects of this location can be. Third is going to be Wolf Asylum with the pill mechanism. Fourth is going to be the Wingard Cottage, which is with its main thing is the crafting system that unfortunately I don't often find the time to use to its fullness. And finally, Station 2891, as I don't find it adds enough uniqueness as a location to stand out, and the uniqueness it does offer just mostly makes things harder, rescuing survivors via the helicopter, the frostbite tokens. But I do enjoy the dog and the flamethrower, though. And even though this is at the bottom of my list for location rankings, it is still a great location. It's just that the others are even better. I like all these locations very much. Now, as far as my recommendations go, I will say that if you are new to Final Girl, the Once Upon a Full Moon is a great place to start because the Big Bad Wolf is the least complex, and the fact that he's a bit easier also makes him a good entry point. Hans from Season 1 is the least complex of all of the killers, but he can be brutal with his higher health and damage as well as his speed. Whereas the Big Bad Wolf is slightly more complex, he is easier to go up against than Hans, and he's not too much more complex. The location is also simpler as it has lots of overpowered items and positive events that will help you. If you're looking for very unique killers or maps, I would definitely go with Panics at Station 2891 or Into the Void. Both the killers and locations offer some unique challenges. Station 2891 has roadblocks for rescuing people, which are balanced a bit with the two-way radio and some cool items like the dog and flamethrower. And the Conrad with 3 ways to win, coupled with cool things to activate and tunnels that you can crawl through. The killers also are certainly the most unique killers. The organism requiring you to test people to find out if they are mutated or if they're safe, and then offering 3 different organisms that can appear. And the Evomorph with its evolve mechanism and ability to disappear and reappear when you least want it to. Definitely very unique. If you want ones that are a little bit more basic but offer their own unique challenge to overcome, then either the Ratchet Lady with her extreme health coupled with a location that gives you special benefits from pills, or the Intruders, which cause you to focus on taking out 3 different killers from the get-go that are terrorizing a cabin in the woods while offering you the ability to craft some powerful weapons and traps. Both of these could be good choices if you want somewhat basic, but they offer you pretty good challenge as well. Honestly, this entire season is great. So great, I felt many of the Season 1 feature films dropped a point in comparison. The only one that personally fell flat for me from a challenge perspective is the Big Bad Wolf, but I still really love the location. It can be a great starter as well. I love the location because of the theme and because of some of the cool items that you can get, which admittedly does make things easier as well, but they are just so fun to use, as well as some pretty fun events in there. Now, one last thing to talk about is the vignette Terror from the Grave, which is about zombies. I have left this for last, separate from the others, because it is not a full feature and as such does not contain a location. This does not mean that it is the least. In fact, this is the one I have lost the most, with about a 50% win ratio. Others I carry between a 75 to 80% or higher win ratio. Some locations are harder than others with the zombies. The easiest being Storybook Woods, if you are able to find the raft, which is super overpowered against the zombies. And the second easiest being Station 2891, due to there only being one exit that you can puppy guard a bit to reduce your zombie problem. Basically, in this one, you are starting out with zombies on the board, and the horde will grow each round, spawning a zombie or two from exit spaces. Plus, some terror cards spawn zombies as well. And when zombies kill victims, those victims turn into zombies as well. Whenever there are 3 zombies in a space together, it forms a horde, which then will move together. You can get to the point of doing 6 damage per action. The health of the horde is based on how many zombies are in that horde, and it goes up every time a new zombie joins the horde. Now, this vignette has a pandemic feel to it, where you are having to keep things in check and put out fires in the form of decreasing the zombie population while still trying to rescue victims or find items that will be helpful at taking out the hordes that form. Once the finale hits, the good news is that zombies stop spawning in and you can finally focus on just cleaning up the location to win the game. If, of course, you make it to the finale and have what it takes to take on whatever hordes have formed or continue to form or grow from the zombies that are left. Really, individual zombies are not problematic in this game. It really comes down to the hordes that you really have to look out for. And the dark powers can be pretty brutal in this one. One dark power even lets hordes combine, and if any horde ever has 12 or more zombies in it, you lose the game immediately. I really do enjoy this vignette, but I'm not sure where I would rank it on the killer list, because it has a very different feel from the rest. Probably somewhere between 2nd and 5th, below the organism and above Big Bad Wolf, but where I really can't place it. The killers in this season overall were very hard to rank. If you are looking for my thoughts on the Season 1 feature films, you can check out this video right here. I also have a playthrough video for all of the Season 2 feature films and some of the Season 1 feature films. I plan to do the Zombies vignette at some point. You can check out a couple of those videos here as well. As always, I hope you have enjoyed this video and has given you some useful information. And I'll catch you in the next one.